Hello and welcome to Bonus Action Dash. My name is Jaren and this is Friday Night Game Chat, a segment for which I don't have a better name for yet, but it's where I want to talk about the game, my thoughts, and different topics related to D&D. And as it happens, we are about a week and a half out from the latest playtest from Wizards of the Coast, the latest playtest for the OneDND update coming in 2023. And tonight, want to give my thoughts on it. So I have given it some time. I've given it the last week to think about it. I've watched some other streams. I've listened to some podcasts for some other takes and really wanted to make sure that I wasn't just giving a knee-jerk reaction to change bad, so I wanted to give it my honest thoughts, give it some time to settle in, and then give it some feedback, give you guys some feedback, and then eventually I'll submit my my comments on their survey. So this playtest is all about the expert classes, that being the Ranger, Bard, and Rogue. So we're taking a look at a full caster, half caster, and a non-caster. And lots of exciting things in here. So we're going to see how classes are constructed. We get some new feats in this document. We get finally a look at not just a partial listing of these three spell lists, but the full list and additionally how the classes access them, which we'll talk about. And we have some new things in the rules glossary. Now, I am looking forward to some future playtest material as they have in this gray box over here. We're getting a bunch of subclasses, grand total of 48. I think other creators have done the math, and I think we currently have like 40 or 44. So it's really not like we're getting that many new ones. We're getting some new and revised spells. In this document, we have some revised spells, which we'll cover. New and revised feats, which we're seeing already. New weapon options for certain classes. A new system for creating a home base for your characters. I imagine this is probably coming in the Dungeon Master's Guide updates. And I wonder if that was even a thing that people were asking for. We have revised encounter building rules and new and revised monsters, which we so desperately need because challenge rating is a terrible way to make encounters. It's kind of useful, but not really. And we especially need new and revised monster stat blocks if we're going to see a bunch of boosts to player characters and them getting stronger and stronger. We need boosts to enemies. We need a better way to run these encounters. So I'm excited for the future playtests. Excited to review them as well. But in this playtest, we're looking at the expert classes, that of Ranger, Bard, and Rogue. Drinking on stream is always a good idea, right? I'm just making it so my voice doesn't completely get shot over the next hour. But let's get into it. I do like overall how they're constructing these classes. Once we get down into like taking a look at the actual Bard class, you'll see what I'm talking about. We can kind of get an idea of what the future playtests are going to be. This time we're looking at the experts group, Bard, Ranger, Rogue. And in the future, we can already see here how they're grouping other classes. Mages are sorcerers, warlocks, wizards. Priests are clerics, druids, paladins, which is kind of a weird way to group them because I can certainly imagine at least a druid not really being tied to a deity, just being somebody that is really in tune with nature. So it's really weird for them to be grouped into the priests class group. And then warriors, barbarian, fighter, and monk, which is, it's whatever. And also the artificer is an expert. So we'll be looking, I guess we're not going to be looking at that here, but it is in the experts class. We're not looking at it here because it's not going to be in the player's handbook for reasons. I don't know why. So that's probably what we're going to be seeing in the next three playtests, I would guess, is we're going to be looking at these other classes. So new class or class highlights, the three class highlights in this article. We'll also take a look at at least one subclass per class. These three classes have new features as well as revised versions of old features. When a class offers a decision, a suggested choice is usually presented, especially at lower levels, which we're going to see with casters at least. They've given us suggested spells to take for each casting class, which I'm really excited about. And lastly, each class's old 20th level feature has been moved to 18th level, opening up the slot for 20th level epic boons. that to me is whatever, because I don't really ever play at that level. So, you know, I can't really comment on that. But let's get into bards. Let's take a look at the bard class. And right away, I guess what I really like about the way that this is organized, especially if we scroll down to creating a bard, we can see already some changes based on the 2014 Player's Handbook, which I always went to the section that said quick build, because I don't want to have to think about what stats to pick, what to put as my highest stat, and all this, and what they're, I always went to quick build, and it seems like that's just becoming the default now, and saying like, yeah, here's your primary skills. If you scroll up to the top, we see their primary ability is charisma, in case you lived under a rock and aren't familiar with bards, or you're a new player. Yeah, because when I'm making a character, I don't want to have to think about that stuff. Tell me the way to make the skeleton of the class, and then let me go do the interesting stuff like picking abilities and spells and thinking of their backgrounds and their backstory. So I'm really glad that this layout is different. Looking at this table here, we can see that basically the way that they gain spells, the number of spells they get and how it progresses has remained the same, as well as their bardic inspiration die, so no changes there. Just taking a quick glance, and I'm not going to talk about every single little feat and every little feature of the class, but I do want to talk about some bigger picture stuff. So I'm not going to mention too much about all this nonsense. They did see some things get moved around. Jack of all trades is now moved to 5th level. Previously, it was at 2nd. They get expertise at 2nd level instead of 3rd now. Their Song of Rest was replaced with, let's scroll down a bit. Their Song of Rest was replaced with Songs of Restoration. If you don't remember, Song of Rest was that feature where when your party was taking a short rest, you could play some songs, and if they were using hit die to regain hit points, your Song of Rest would help them restore more. And I'm really happy to see this change, because I think no one ever remembered to do that. And I think using spell slot, or using hit die during short rest to gain back hit points is not something that I see used that often. There's just so many other ways to gain back hit points that I don't see that happening all that often. So changed here now, you have Songs of Restoration, and you get these at every even level up to 10th. They're just always prepared spells. They don't count against your prepared spells, and they're all your basic healing spells. Once we get to the Bard's spell list, we're going to see that these are missing, but that's fine, because, you get them. Bard's missing a lot of healing in their spell list, but they get these Songs of Restoration as they level up. So it's fine. We can see also, I forgot to mention something. Bardic Inspiration is a little different now, and I think this is also for the better. Before, it was always a thing where you'd give one of your players, one of your allies, Bardic Inspiration, and they'd sit there with a die, and then you get to the end of the session and go, oh shoot, I forgot to use my Bardic Inspiration. And it's like, well, I guess, that kind of sucked for the bard, right? The way it's different now is you can use your reaction after someone fails a D20 test. Remember, that's the ability check, attack roll, or saving throw. Whenever they fail that, you can use your reaction to give them a Bardic Inspiration, and they roll the die immediately, right? So they no longer have to sit there and hold on to a die, and you as the bard feel kind of useless because they never used it. It's an immediate use. You get to feel like the hero, and you don't have to worry. Like, they don't have to keep track of that die. It's just used up immediately. And it's at your decision, not theirs. And I think that's a really good change. You can also use this to heal now. Use your reaction after someone takes damage to restore hit points based on that die. And that's super strong. Bards using Bardic Inspiration to heal middle of combat is really good. Might be overpowered, I don't know. But Bardic Inspiration definitely changed. Moving on, I said they get expertise a level sooner. Font of Inspiration moved to 7th level from 5th level. And the other change to Font of Bardic Inspiration, aside from it going to 7th level, is when someone uses that die and they get a 1, it doesn't use that up. You just get that back. They still get to add the 1 to that score, it's just like, it's like rolling a crit 1 on a Bardic Inspiration. You just don't get to use it up. They still add it. It just doesn't count against you. So that's kind of neat too. I think some of these other things are mostly the same. 10th level expertise is now achieved at 9th level. Yeah, so let's look at the spells. This is a big change. And we're finally getting to see how spells are accessed by each class, as well as we're getting some hints as to some other big changes they're making to spell casting. So the first one is bards, they access the arcane spell list. And if we look at, I think I might have passed this actually. Yeah, it's up in the spell casting section. It tells you what spells they can access. They get the arcane spell list, and it must be one of these four schools: divination, enchantment, illusion, and transmutation. I'm looking right up here. So that means we scroll all the way down to the arcane spell list. And when we're looking at bard spells to pick, we go, let's see, this sounds interesting. And then we go over to the school and go, is that one that I can pick? Wait, what schools could I pick again? I have to go back and reference and go, wait a sec, was this one that I could choose? What was it? Divination, enchantment, illusion, and transmutation. And then you scroll back down and then you see which ones you can pick. And it's a real big pain in the ass. I'm going to be honest with you. This was not fun. When I was I wanted to see what bards gained, what they lost, what changed from the current 2014 bard list to see if this was a good change or not. And what I found myself doing was just going through all this stuff and simply recreating the bard spell list. And I think that's probably what most people are going to do anyways. The other change that they made was we can see, and this applies also for rangers. Let's go back up. Oh God, there's so much in this document. When we go back up to spell casting, we see whenever you finish a long rest, you can practice your bardic arts and replace any spell you have prepared with another of the same level, as long as it's in the same, as long as it's a spell that you can cast, right? So long rest, you swap out your spells. This also applies to rangers who couldn't do that before. I'm guessing this is how spell casting is going to work. It's going to be long rest, you can change your spells. And I'm reserving my judgment for this on two things: until I see how all spellcasting classes work, and until I see how wizards, the wizard class, until I see how that works. Because wizards have that baked into the class, right? The ability to, or the fact that they have known spells versus prepared spells. They have a spell book. That whole spell book is their list of known spells. When they prepare spells, it's literally preparing spells. It's at the start of the day, going through and saying, okay, I have a list of 10 things in my book. I have the brain capacity to remember 6 of them because they're very intricate. There's specific hand positions you have to do. There's exact components that I need and specific measurements. There's really precise arcane words that I have to utter and be very crisp and precise about it. And I only have the capacity to really think about and focus on those 6 things. Those are my prepared spells. But the known spells is my spell book, right? It's this hefty tome I carry around with me. And whenever I find new spells on a scroll or I find a wizard's spell book, I have to take time to get the right arcane inks and materials and arcane paper to copy that down so that I can now know that new spell. And if all casting classes just know all spells all the time, and it's their prepared spells that really matter, one of two things: either wizards still have to prepare spells and know spells, which would be a gigantic nerf to wizards, or they just know all spells, I guess, and their spell book's irrelevant, or they graduate wizard college and they're handed a really hefty phone book tome of, here's every spell that exists, just don't cast wish, please, don't even try. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how that's going to work. I'm reserving my judgment for this change until I see how they all work and until I see what they're going to do with wizards. But back to bards. I as I mentioned before, if all classes get to do that, I think one of two things will happen. You're going to get sick of going back and forth and forgetting which spells you can cast because it's a different school. And you're just going to, especially if you're able to change them every day, you're going to eventually just write down your favorites, right? You're going to go, these are good combat spells, these are good utility spells, and you're going to just make the dang spell list yourself anyways, especially if you're brand new or if you're new to a class that can do that. Short story, my first D&D character in my adult playing years was a druid. Not the shape-changing druid, the spell-casty druid. And they get to do that. They get to change their spells every long rest. And my God, is that annoying. As somebody new to that class, is I had to read through spells and descriptions and really think hard in the middle of the game what spells I wanted to pick. And I went and bought these druid spell cards so I could have them at a quick notice and quick glance. And it takes a lot of game time when, you know, we're taking a long rest and I'm having to sit there and shift through. And eventually I just didn't do it because it was such a pain. I just picked my best spells and those were my spells. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. I don't think that this change to the spell lists is very useful or beneficial for players. I think it's really just beneficial for Wizards of the Coast. It just makes them feel good and designers feel good that, look at this nice, pretty thing. Isn't it elegant that we now don't have a spell list for every single class in the game that can cast a spell? And whenever we want to add a class that is a caster, we don't have to give them a whole new spell list. We just say, you use the Primal list or the Divine list or the Arcane list. But let's be real, they haven't really added a new casting class since 2014 besides the Artificer. And that's not even getting a spot in the player's handbook. So do we really need this revised way of looking at spell lists? I don't know. Anyways, let's look at how the Bard spell list changed. This was the culmination of my pain, so enjoy it. And we can see that the Bard list is changing a great deal. I think they gain a lot, but they lose a lot, so the overall feeling is going to be a lot different. We lose a lot of things that are sort of nature-y or non-Bard related, and we gain a lot of things that are more about the manipulation of the world around you. So right off the bat here, cantrips, we lose Blade Ward, Light, Mage Hand, and Thunderclap. I think losing Mage Hand's kind of a downer. You know, that was a really good spell, and it's not even really like it's a broken, overpowered spell. It just was a really fun thing to play around with. Scrolling down where we start to see the loss of nature-type spells with Animal Friendship and Speak with Animals. We no longer have Fairy Fire and Healing Word and Cure Wounds, but like I mentioned, they're getting healing spells as part of the class. We lose more stuff at second level, like Animal Messenger, Locate Animals and Plants, but they gain a lot of stuff. And this trend kind of continues, where we lose a lot of things, but we gain a lot of things. We lose Dimension Door is kind of a big one. I'm kind of sad to see that go away from a Bard list. But we gain, you know, Arcane Eye, Control Weather, Stone Shape, Stone Skin. We lose some stuff, but we gain some stuff. 6th level, same thing. We lose some stuff, but we gain some stuff. And it's the same sort of thing, all the way up to 9th level. So I think, yeah, the big ones are the loss of Dimension Door and the loss of Mage Hand. Do they still have, like, Polymorph? I think they do. I just don't remember what level of spell that is. They do still have Polymorph. Good. It's 4th level. So I think overall, Bard's spell list, it's going to feel a lot different. It's not necessarily stronger or weaker, I think, but that remains to be seen if this would be the final list for Bards. Let's take a look at the first subclass in the College of Lore and compare that to the first College of Lore, the first, the original 2014 subclass. 3rd level proficiencies, bonus proficiencies, works exactly the same. This is the same. 3rd level Cutting Words. This is a little bit different. It's improved because this works similarly to the way that Bardic Inspiration was changed, where you only get to do that as a reaction to somebody failing. Similarly with Cutting Words now, you use your reaction after an enemy succeeds, or really like anybody, but you're probably not going to use this on an ally. You can use your reaction after you see somebody succeed an ability check or attack roll, you use your Bardic Inspiration and subtract that number. So the effect is the same. It just changes when you do it. So I think you're going to see more actual usefulness of cutting words. You're not going to be burning it on, let me cast cutting words before they make their attack, and oh, it's a 19 and they hit anyways, they go to attack. Probably the situation I'm looking for is I'm gonna use cutting words and oops, it's a natural 1 and that was useless. That's probably more the instance they're trying to avoid. 6th level Cunning Inspiration. This is new. What this allows you to do is anybody that's rolling Bardic Inspiration, they get to basically roll Inspiration with advantage. It's rolling your Bardic Inspiration die twice, picking the higher. That's new. This is cool. I like it. 10th level, Improved Cutting Words. This is also something new. This is allowing your cutting words to deal psychic damage. Whether or not it succeeds based on your cutting words. It's just automatic damage. Equal to a number from your Bardic Inspiration plus your Charisma modifier. And then lastly, 14th level Peerless Skill. I think this is also new. And what this does, I misread it the first time. What this does is it allows you to use Bardic Inspiration on yourself, and if it fails, you don't burn that Bardic Inspiration. This is a really cool feature. It really reminds me of the 6th level feature from the College of Eloquence featured in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. But I don't think this really feels all that exciting for a 14th level feature. It's good. It's just, if I was playing a College of Lore Bard, I'm not really getting excited about hitting 14th level just for this. It's just not that exciting. But overall thoughts on Bard in this list are, it's going to feel different. One take that I heard, I was listening to a podcast. It's Dungeon Master of None, I think it's what it's called. And their take on the Bard, very good podcast. I've listened to most of it, most of their episodes. But their take on Bard was that it felt weird always for Bards to be a full casting class, and would like to see them as a half caster. And I kind of agree, because I think it would be really cool if once you get to higher levels, you're not casting stronger spells, you're doing more Bard stuff. You're playing your instrument in order to do cool stuff that changes the world around you. I think that would be a neat direction for Bards. So overall, I think this is going to feel different. I don't think it's stronger or worse, but Bard was always a pretty good go-to class to begin with. Okay, enough on Bards. Let's talk about Ranger. We've got ridiculously big changes to the Ranger class here. Right off the bat, maybe you're not familiar with Rangers because no one plays Rangers anymore, except for me playing a Swarmkeeper Ranger in my my Wednesday night group. They get cantrips and first level spells at first level. They never had that before. It was always wait till second level to get first level spells. They've never had cantrips before. Huge change. They get expertise, which I don't think they ever had before either. We have changes to favored enemy. Now the 2014 Player's Handbook favored enemy is kind of garbage, and I think this probably turned off a lot of people to Rangers. Let me just scroll up a bit here. I was looking at Ranger subclasses. Where is it? Gosh, it's so far up here. Favored, yeah, it used to be no, not favored foe. This is the Tasha's optional feature. 2014 favored enemy, however, is pretty terrible. Here it is you choose one of these types of enemies. It's a creature type, and you've got advantage on survival checks to track them, as well as intelligence checks to recall information, and you gain an extra language or one that's spoken by your favorite enemy. And it's kind of garbage because you just don't know what's going to be in your campaign, and it's a locked-in thing, right? If you pick this, you can't change your favorite enemy ever, and it's kind of garbage. The Tasha's favorite enemy is slightly better. It lets you deal extra damage. This favorite enemy is interesting because allows you to always have Hunter's Mark. It doesn't count towards your prepared spells. And the big change here is it doesn't take concentration. So that means this is really exciting for me because there's a lot of really cool ranger spells that require concentration that now don't get in the way of Hunter's Mark. I think that's a really cool change. In addition, as we're going to see in the Hunter subclass, there are some things that rely on Hunter's Mark being up. So I think this is a cool change. Let's take a look. I think there's some other higher level things that are interesting about this class. Roving, I think, is the same. They obviously have some spots as they level up where they get more expertise, because that's what the expert classes do. I don't remember if Tireless is brand new, this feature where they gain temp HP whenever they finish a short or long rest, and can reduce exhaustion by 1 after a short rest. We're going to see exhaustion has changed a lot, so this could be a good relevant class feature. And then at 13th level, Nature's Veil. This one's really neat. Bonus action, you become invisible until the end of your next turn. And I think it's a really cool thing to be able to do. It makes sort of sense. And you can describe this in a very thematic, ranger-like sort of a way. 15th level Feral Senses. You get Blind Sight to 30 feet. Just more ranger type stuff. Let's look at the exciting stuff, which is the Ranger spell list. I need to mention here what they get to do. They can cast off of the primal list all schools except evocation. So we'll go down to the primal list. I went past it. I think this is still arcane. Scroll down, divine and primal. All schools except for evocation. So for example, no produce flame, no fairy fire. So let's look at the ranger spell list. The short of it is they didn't lose really much, and they gain a ton of spells. Of course, cantrips, right? Because they never had cantrips before. All the cantrips on this list are brand new, and some of these are a little weird. For example, like Druidcraft and Shillelagh and Thornwhip, which to me always felt like Druid spells. And especially, looking further into this class description, I put a note here. Where is it? Yeah, they talk about the Ranger spellcasting focus as just saying, oh, you get to use a Druid spellcasting focus. And that combined with looking at these spell lists and seeing, not that I'm mad that we get Druidcraft or Shillelagh or Thornwhip, but it's just like, guys, I'm not a discount Druid. I'm my own class. Ranger is its own class. You don't have to reference us in terms of what a Druid can do. I'm a Ranger. I'm not a Druid. I don't need a Druid spellcasting focus. I'm glad that I get these cool cantrips, but it feels like I'm being, put into this box of being like a weaker version of Druid. Let's keep talking about spells before I rant more on Wizards of the Coast. Their first level spell list, they lost Alarm, but they got a bunch of stuff. It's kind of weird. Alarm's a neat spell, and it wasn't particularly broken or anything, so I don't know why they felt like this had to go. Second level, they lose nothing. They gain a bunch of stuff. Third level, they lose Daylight and Windwall and gain a bunch of stuff. Fourth level, they lose nothing and they gain a bunch of stuff. Fifth level, losing nothing. And this is where they cap out. They only go to fifth level spells. So they're a half casting class. Losing nothing, gaining a lot of stuff. So the short of it is, yeah, Rangers gain a lot of spells. Probably the class that needed the most help. So I guess this is exciting. We'll see. Hard to say if this is broken or not, because it's the first time Ranger's going to have all this stuff. Let's take a look at the Hunter subclass. And I'm going to try to compare this to the Hunter subclass 2014. First up, third level Hunter's Prey. Now, technically speaking, this is worse. right? I need to scroll down to where the Hunter subclass is on D&D Beyond, because I didn't have that in its own tab. Hunter. So before 2014, they had 3 different options: Colossus Slayer, Giant Killer, and Horde Breaker. And if we look now, this 2014 version is literally just Colossus Slayer. It's the same thing. It's whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack, that creature takes an extra 1d8 if it's not at its max HP once per turn. Playtest Hunter's Prey. It's, you know, whenever you hit it, they 1d8 damage if it's not at max once per turn. The only difference here is that it also includes unarmed strikes, which is sort of like big deal, because like Rangers don't ever really like unarmed strike. They're really trying to stay at range and attack with longbows and crossbows and stuff. So it's like, I don't really care about unarmed strikes. I do care about options, and this is strictly worse. So thumbs down on this one. 6th level Hunter's Lore. This is brand new. And it's kind of cool. This kind of reminds me of what's the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, I think? The Way of the Cobalt Soul Monk, in which they get to learn information about their enemy. And here, we see this feature that is based on Hunter's Mark. If something is marked, if it's marked, there's no save. It's just, when it's marked, you know their resistances, immunities, and vulnerabilities. And I'd really like that as a thematic thing. Getting to kind of like look at your enemy from a distance, glare them down, and you know stuff about them. They're your favorite enemy. You get to hone in on their weaknesses and pinpoint where they're weak, where you should hit, what things you should hit them with. I like that a lot. It's really cool. 10th level multi-attack. This is different, first of all, because this feature used to come at 10th or at 11th level, now comes at 10th. It's also a little bit different. We no longer have this volley option, which is a range attack. It's a area of effect for 10 feet, or this whirlwind attack, which is get to basically spray if you're surrounded by enemies. It's now always having the Conjure Barrage spell prepared, which is a really cool spell. The other thing, this is really neat, is you have the ability to downcast Conjure Barrage. I think it is a 3rd level spell, if I remember correctly. This is giving us instructions for how to downcast a spell. And if I'm correct, this is the first time we've ever seen downcasting a spell in anything from Wizards of the Coast 5th edition. And this, I hope, is opening up the possibility of downcasting spells in other areas of the game too, because I think that idea is really neat. Lastly, we have 14th level Superior Hunter's Defense. Whenever you hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to halve the attack's damage, and you can redirect the other half to one creature you can see within 5 feet. Now, slightly different than the old 15th level feature. The old 15th level gave you sort of this, where you could have evasion or stand against the tide, which was sort of that thing of redirecting the damage, or uncanny dodge. I think this one kind of wraps evasion and stand against the tide all into one, but it's slightly weaker technically. And you get this feature at 14th level. The thing that makes me not as excited about this is, again, this creature that you can see within 5 feet of yourself. Currently playing a ranger. We've been in our campaign for almost 30 sessions, I think now. And maybe it's just the way that I'm playing ranger, but he's playing as not a melee fighter. He's always at the back of the fight, shooting with a longbow. And I think that, to me, feels like how rangers work, is they attack from a distance. You know, they hunt their prey. They're not trying to get in melee combat. So I'm never really within 5 feet of somebody else. I'm never close enough to make that happen. You know, I think if this were changed to 10 feet, I could see this being really useful. Or 10 or even 15 would be a big change and make that actually useful. So that's the Ranger class and the Hunter subclass. Long story short, TLDR, I think Rangers got a lot of help, way more spells. We'll see. we'll see. It could be a lot of really good changes. We'll just have to see how it plays in the real world. Let's go on to rogues. The non-spellcasting class here. Again, we're seeing how to make rogues. We're seeing this move away from quick builds, and instead, like, quick build seems to be the default, but not calling it that. It's just, yeah, your primary ability is dexterity. Here's how to do it. Here's how to make a rogue. Let's go over some of the changes. And I think one other thing to mention here is we're seeing these starting equipments being placed, like the packs, the adventurers pack, the burglars pack. This starting equipment now coming in your class rather than your background, which is probably a good change. Let's take a look. Oh, the other thing too, this is kind of neat. They might have put this in 2014 Player's Handbook. I don't remember, but I'm glad that multi-classing is included in each class, and it tells you kind of how to do that. Let's look at the class features. So, obviously expertise, first level sneak attack. This is different. I think this is the thing that a lot of people are complaining about, of saying that, now rogues can't sneak attack all the time and get sneak attack on other people's turns, or as a reaction. It's just, they've clarified and said once on each of your turns, when you take the attack action, is you get to do sneak attack. And my guess is it's probably meant to be that way to begin with, but there's a lot of ambiguous wording in the 2014 Player's Handbook that I'm hoping that they clarify going forward. I played in a game a couple nights ago on my Wednesday game that there was a feature that one of our characters had that I think allowed damage to be done whenever something, or like extra damage, whenever something took damage on a turn. I'll be talking about this in a future Friday night game chat stream, but it's basically this idea in that specific feature that allowed damage to be done on a turn whenever it took damage, like the first time it took damage. And I think the way that those sorts of things are meant to be worded is it's like a once per round of combat sort of a thing. Not that it's a feature that's meant to scale with party size. That's a really weird way to scale something and to scale a feat. And I think the same thing here is if rogues, if there are some way to have a rogue take more turns or take extra attacks not on their turn, I think in the 2014 wording, they could get sneak attack a bunch of times in one round. And here it's codifying it and saying that, nope, it's a one-time thing. You don't get to do a gazillion damage before it's your turn again. It's just a one-time thing. You get a big chunk of sneak attack damage. So I think a lot of people are saying that Rogue got like majorly nerfed. I think this is fine. It's going to be okay. Rogues still get to do a gazillion damage. It's going to be fine. I'm okay with this change. I'm okay with the specification and saying and clarifying that you only get to do this once when you take the attack action on your turn. So good change. They get Thieves' Cant. This works the same, and they also get to learn an additional language. I guess the one thing here, this also was mentioned in another podcast, that is maybe sort of iffy, is saying that all rogues are thieves. All rogues, for some reason, know Thieves' Cant, which doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So maybe this should be something that comes with the Thief class specifically. I don't know. Cunning action, I think this all works the same. Let's scroll down. Uncanny dodge works the same. I think this, yeah. I think most of the things, and if you look at the video where they were talking about the changes they made to classes, they said that based on some feedback, Rogue was the most loved class and the one that people were most happy with. So we're not seeing a whole lot of changes here. We're seeing a lot of things that are basically left the same. Evasion, you get 2 levels earlier, 7th level versus 9th level. Reliable talent looks to be the same. Subtle strikes is something that's new. 13th level feature that when you attack, you know how to exploit a target's distraction. You have advantage on an attack roll that targets a creature that is within 5 feet if at least one of your allies... you have advantage that targets a creature that is within 5 feet of at least one of your allies who isn't incapacitated. So I'm not exactly sure why this would be a benefit to the rogue specifically, because of sneak attack, specifying that if they're within 5 feet, you get it anyways. You don't need advantage. I guess this just makes your chances to hit a lot better. So sure, it's sort of like whatever. Blind Sense was removed from the class features. I guess it doesn't really matter. What else do we have here? Slippery Mind. Slight upgrade now includes charisma saves, so I guess that's fine. Elusive now at 1 level earlier, 17th versus 18th, and Stroke of Luck, which used to be 20th level, now is at 18th, because now they get 20th level Epic Boon. Let's look at the... so I guess the overall thoughts on rogues, it's not really changed. Sneak attack is specified to only be once on your turn, so that's... I think it's fine. It's not a major nerf like I think a lot of people are looking at it. The Thief subclass, 3rd level, Fast Hands is the same, except they now have a couple more actions that they can do. The Search action, new action, and I will talk about that in the rules glossary. Second story work at 3rd level, also the same. So that's whatever. There might be some like small nuances here, but I think this is basically the same. 6th level, Supreme Sneak. This is a straight upgrade, as this feature used to come at 9th level, and also required you to only use half your movement. Supreme Sneak now, so I guess just to refresh, let's just look that up, since I didn't have that tab up here. We'll go to the Thief subclass, Supreme Sneak. Starting at 9th level, this is now at 7th level, you have an advantage on stealth checks if you move no more than half your speed on the same turn. Now, you have advantage on dex checks for stealth, provided you aren't wearing medium or heavy armor. They remove that half movement requirement. Big upgrade. So thumbs up to this. 10th level, use magic device. This is a strictly better feature. Another thing that used to come at a later level, and now you get it at 10th versus 13th. And it also, well, you get to attune additional items. Sure, that's really good. And you also might not expend a charge from a magic item when you use it, if it's something that has charges. Is this feature good? I don't know. I think it's just iffy. Not really a 10th level feature that I'm excited about. I don't see it being that useful, that you can attune to an extra item and you might not use up a charge of something that has charges on it. I don't see that becoming all that useful. Or this thing for scrolls too. I don't know how useful this is. So it's just sort of whatever. And then lastly, at 14th level, you can now get a second bonus action when you use Cunning action. I think this is pretty neat too. So this is you used to get this at 17th level. It used to be this feature specifically was a 17th level feature, but instead of getting an extra turn, it's just additional bonus action. So I think this is pretty neat. It's good. Certainly good. Doing this at 14th versus 17th, getting an extra bonus action will potentially be a very compounding effect where rogues are getting to do a bunch of stuff on their turn. We'll see. It might get out of hand. Extra turn already was kind of out of hand, but we'll see. It's good. I guess the TLDR of the rogue class, good things stayed the same. Other things got better. They're better overall. Sneak attack got slightly nerfed. The end. Rogue's still going to be really good. I'm not worried that they nerf sneak attack. On to feats. And I'm not going to go through every single feat because there's too many. And I'm getting close to the hour I wanted to do this stream. But the big changes here, I'll just talk about the ones that really drew my attention. The big change here is all the 4th level feats have stat boosts. As they mentioned in the first playtest, first level feats don't. That distinguished them from other feats. Fourth level feats, they all get stat boost. And to me, this is a big, heavy sigh of relief. Finally, this affects this entire list of feats here that never used to have stat boosts. So you always had to make a choice of, and maybe this is why they took off the good parts of Sharpshooter, the good parts of Great Weapon Master, is that instead of giving them like actual usefulness, they give them stat boosts. But you used to have to make a choice between, do I take a garbage feat for the stat boost, or do I take, a decent feat, but I don't get a stat boost? And now you don't have to, even though they like super nerfed Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master, which, I would rather have the effect than the stat boost for those feats. But, overall, I think this is it's a good change, I think, besides these two. Shame on you for nerfing Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master. Let's look at some other feats that drew my attention. Durable, for one, I think is potentially really broken. Potentially really broken. The old durable was garbage. This one might be broken. Ability score increase for your constitution score. You get advantage on death saves, which is already kind of bonkers. Your characters are just going to not die that much with the durable feat. Also, this has no prereq besides Constitution 13. Really easy to hit, especially if you're aiming to do that at 4th level. Also, this feature called Speedy Recovery. As a bonus action, you can expend a hit die and regain hit points. Bonus action, spend a hit die, regain hit points. As a bonus action, middle of combat, bonus action, regain hit points. That's, to me, insane. That is so much better than most things. This isn't a spell. It's a feature granted by a feat that you just get to do. Right? So it's just like, I don't need potions of healing. And if we're going to talk about short rests, I don't need to short rest. I don't need to spend an hour sitting down to restore hit points. Not when I can close my eyes and take a couple of breaths and burn all of them in half a minute and regain all those hit points back with the durable feat. Because it's a bonus action, right? I can burn all of them in about 30 seconds at 6th level or at 5th level. So this, I think, my God, this is a strong feat. I don't like this at all. From a Dungeon Master's perspective, this makes combat encounters real annoying. It makes me want to straight up like not allow this feat to be in the game. Again, no prereq, just Constitution 13. Every class in the game can take this as long as you're kind of aiming for that. Constitution 13, not hard to hit, especially because you're probably putting Constitution as like one of your top 3 scores anyways, just so you're not sitting at like 30 hit points at 9th level, right? Or whatever it is. Anyways, let's continue on, shall we? As I mentioned, Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter are much different. They nerf that to the ground. You no longer get the -5 to the attack, +10 to damage. It's just kind of garbage. They give you a stat boost. Great Weapon Master, you'll no longer get that extra damage. They just kept the other things, but not the damage. Kind of annoyed by that. Keen Mind is different, and in my opinion, kind of worse. It did some cool stuff. If you watch Critical Role Campaign 2, you know exactly what Keen Mind does, because it lets the character to like remember everything like a photographic memory. Always know directions, always know what date and time it is. You have a photographic memory, basically. I don't know why they changed this. I don't remember anybody calling for that to be changed, because it's not even that good of a feat to begin with. And now we're going to see that it's different. Ability score increase, proficiency in one of these skills. If you already have proficiency, you get expertise, and you can take the study action as a bonus action. My God, Wizards, why? Who is taking the study action as a bonus action in the middle of combat? Nobody, because there's so much better things to do. Additionally, we'll get to what this means when we get to the glossary, big problems with that, in my opinion. Let's see. Observant is probably better. Was in my notes. Ability score increase. Obviously, it's a 4th level feat. You gain proficiency with the skill, and you can take the search action as a bonus action. Again, probably not taking this as a bonus action in the middle of combat. I'm probably doing literally anything else that can be beneficial to the combat, not to searching around. So maybe my initial notes were wrong. This kind of seems like it might not be that good. Speedster is a new feat. I don't think this actually is a new feat. I think it might just used to be called the mobile feat. Increases your speed by 10 feet, and you can dash over difficult terrain without extra movement. Sure. And then lastly, the last one I wanted to mention, I guess, is this weapon training is no longer called Weapon Master for some reason. I'm not really sure why. And that's all I wanted to talk about with feats. There's probably some other ones you could nitpick to the ground, every single thing, every little nuanced change. Those are just the ones that I found worthy of talking about. Very likely I'm missing some that are probably changed in a big way. Spell list we already talked about. I don't know why we need these. They don't really seem to benefit players. And let's go down to the rules glossary. Again, not talking about everything because I think there are some things that were in the original playtest that we're seeing repeated. I'm only going to talk about things that were noteworthy or changed. So we first have a change to the spell Bark Skin. Previously, this was a spell that granted you, or granted the target a base level of 16, or maybe it was, let me just refresh, because now I'm doubting myself. I think this just gave it a flat AC of 16. Right, it's a flat AC 16, can't be changed. The new change is it's now a bonus action instead of an action, and still a 2nd level. Concentration up to an hour, but the target regains, they get temporary hit points that go into play. They gain temporary hit points every turn. This bark-like skin, and if you can kind of imagine this happening, I like the thematic nature of it. You know, you're sort of like regaining this bark-like skin that's regrowing every single turn. It just seems like a really cool thematic thing, and it's, in my opinion, fits what the spell is called much more closely than just a flat AC 16. So thumbs up to this. I like this a lot. What else did we change? The roll of a 20. We've changed to the D20 tests, and they're testing out in this one now, instead of a D20, instead of a natural 20 giving you inspiration now, they're giving it on a 1 and seeing how that works. I think this is a good change. It's at least much better than on a 20 for sure, because on a 20, like we mentioned in the past stream, that this just really encourages D20 grinding, you know, and no one wants to roll a 1, so we're not going to see any of that with this change. By the way, I should mention they're also changing and calling this heroic inspiration instead of inspiration. That's probably a good change too, because it differentiates it from bardic inspiration a little further. Maybe they should just call both those something else instead of, you know, so we avoid confusion and word overlap. So good change to this. Difficult terrain. I wanted to mention this because I do really like specifically defining what constitutes and gives an example of difficult terrain. So I do like this. It's not really a change, really. It's just setting a definition. So good on them. This is good. The exhausted condition, big change here, and I both love it and hate it. So the old exhaustion was not a condition. There was an exhausted table, and first of all, no one remembered what each one of the levels did. It was like at level 0, this, and at level, you know, when you have 1 level of exhaustion, this happens. 2 levels is something completely different, right? This new method, if you can, whenever you get the exhausted condition, you gain a level. and you're good unless you exceed 10 levels of exhaustion, right? I think the old table went up to 6. And the way that this works now is you subtract whatever level of exhaustion you're at from any D20 test and from your spell save DC. So if you're at 3 levels of exhaustion, all your D20 rolls got a -3. Your spell save DC is decreased by 3. Whenever you finish a long rest, you remove 1 level. When you reach back to 0 levels, you are no longer exhausted. So my thoughts are good change, yes, because no one memorized that original table anyways. Let me pull that up. Just to give an example, or just to show. Oh, of course. Oh, we have to look up conditions, I think. Because reasons. Here we go. Player's Handbook. Conditions. Yeah, so there was this table that at 1 level of exhaustion, you had disadvantage on ability checks. 2 levels, speed halved. 3 levels, disadvantage on attacks and saving throws. Right? So this was, no one memorized this. Whenever you gain exhaustion, everyone always had to look this up. And this one only goes up to, once you hit 6 levels of exhaustion, you're just dead. So thoughts on here, no one memorized that. So good change. I think maybe this change also falls in line with the way that long rests are being changed, where if you're interrupted in a long rest, and you know, you have to restart everything to gain the benefits of that long rest, meaning you're probably going to see more players getting levels of exhaustion. Maybe this is the reason that they wanted to change this, because getting multiple levels of exhaustion with the new long rests would be really annoying and put you close to death a lot. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe we're going to see more things that can cause exhaustion. So gamifying, from a gamifying perspective, is a good change. It's a lot easier to remember. Makes sense. However, Wizards of the Coast, D&D is not a video game. And I understand we're trying to keep it simple enough to be understandable. It's still realistic, but not so realistic that it's overly complicated. I think this goes a bit too far. This is so not even close to realism that it makes me not want to adopt this system. Good example, real life story. A couple of days ago, I had a real rough day where I got basically about 4 hours of sleep. It was between 4 and 5 hours of like not so good sleep. Effectively, I was running the day on exhaustion, on 1 level of exhaustion. You try running at normal speed on 4 hours of sleep. You try thinking and having a clear head and focusing on anything on 4 hours of sleep. You can't. It sucks. It's not fun. It way more looks in line with this stuff. You know, disadvantage on ability checks is I can't really think straight because I have 4 hours of sleep. Speed halved is I'm moving really slow because I have 4 hours of sleep. I'm not in a good way. You know, so this, even as clunky and as hard to remember as it is in my opinion, way better than simply, oh, you minus a number from all your rolls and your spell save DC gets, you know, lowered as well. So for that reason, I'm going to have to thumbs down on this exhausted rule set. Maybe this still needs some work because no one remembers this. That said, I don't think this is the answer. Let's move on. Guidance was gutted. The guidance spell was completely gutted. Still a cantrip. The change here, it still does the same thing. Well, I guess the big difference, it doesn't do the same thing. The difference here is it's no longer you tap someone and give them guidance. And I think, am I remembering correctly? It used to be you tap somebody. It's a touch spell. Might be remembering wrong. It is touch. So big changes to guidance. It's no longer touch. It is 30 feet. And it's a reaction you make to an ally failing an ability check. You let them roll a d4, add it to the thing to maybe turn it to a success. Once they roll for guidance, they no longer can benefit from guidance until after they finish a long rest. This super sucks. And I think they made this change to avoid spamming guidance all the time on ability checks, which I get, but I think if your players are respectful, they're not doing that anyways. They're not just sitting there going, well, you need to have me along with you whenever you go to test the bridge, whenever you go to pick locks, because I'm gonna give you guidance. And I don't think, I think respectful players aren't doing that. This completely guts guidance, and I dislike this change. Like I said, I don't think it was broken or overused before, but I dislike that a character's ability to benefit from something else is not in that caster's control. It's no longer in the caster of guidance's control whether or not you can benefit from guidance. It's just if you do it, you don't get to use it, once per day. I don't like that. Also, it super sucks to pick guidance as your cantrip and go, well, once a number of people equal to my party use and get a benefit from guidance, this cantrip slot is useless. I can't use this for any benefit anymore for the rest of the day because 4 people use benefit from it. This feels more like a class feature rather than a cantrip, rather than a spell. Maybe this should have been a class feature. If you're going to cap it and say, well, you only get to benefit from this, once per day. Once you've used, once your party's benefited all from it, sorry, you just can't use that cantrip anymore. And you've used up that slot. Sucks to be you, doesn't it? So a big thumbs down on this change. There's got to be a better way to change guidance so that it discourages spamming. This isn't the way. Maybe we make it a cantrip that is the only cantrip with a material cost, a small one, but maybe it's like, something meaningful. Maybe you got to pay a gold every time you want to cast guidance. It's like, yeah, the first one doesn't hurt, but once you cast guidance, 50 times over the course of a week, you're going to think twice. You're probably not going to want to do that. Gold isn't unlimited. And I'm not saying that's a good solution. I'm just saying that's a better solution than this. This is not the way to do it, I think. Oh, my cat wants to say hello. The help action I do want to talk about. A change here is you must be proficient in a skill to help an ally. Maybe this is how it was before, but I don't remember anybody doing it this way. I do like this change, and it says, you choose a skill, one of your skill proficiencies, and an ally who can see or hear you. You give them advantage on the next ability check they make with that chosen skill. So you have to be proficient in it. This makes sense because it gives you a good justification for why you can help them. You're proficient with sleight of hand. Cool, you can help with lockpicking. Whatever it is. So I like that change. I do want to talk about all these things that we have codified as actions. For example, the influence action, the search action, the study action. These are weird. It feels like gamifying things that we already do. I don't feel like we need to do this. Again, this one feels weird to me, specifically the influence action, because I feel like it takes away a lot of the dungeon master's agency. Right? The way that this works, to me, this is like gamifying roleplay, and I don't like this. The way that this mechanic works is you have to look at the target creature's attitude, and it does say that this isn't like mind control, it's just simply influence. Are they indifferent, friendly, or hostile? First of all, it is entirely possible that a creature is one or multiple of those things, or something in the middle, or it's a friendly creature that is hostile in the moment. Like your best friend's mad at you, right? So it doesn't really make any sense, except from a gamified perspective, to try and put a person's attitude towards you in this small, tiny box. It's really weird and like borderline insulting and problematic. a creature could be all these things. A creature could be multiple or combinations or everything in between. So continue on after you know what this is, you use the interaction and you make an ability check. And depending on your role, this is the certain outcome, right? So for example, if they're indifferent and it's a base level DC, sorry, I'm thinking of something else here. So DC of you make a roll to try to influence based on their attitude, different outcomes happen. So you roll a 10 on something that is indifferent. Creature does his ass as long as there's no risks or sacrifice. You roll a 20. Creature accepts a minor risk or sacrifice. If they're friendly, they're gonna be willing to do a little bit more. If they're hostile, you roll a 10. Creature offers no help but does no harm. If you roll a 20, creature does his ask as long as no risks or sacrifices are involved. I dislike these hard-coded this is what happens in the same way that I disliked in the past playtest a 20 automatically succeeding. Because if this is meant to be a player document, every player is going to look at this and go, if I roll a natural 20, I can convince enemies to turn around and walk away because the book says I can. And this takes away the Dungeon Master's ability to have some agency over the outcome. I say make a charisma check or make a persuasion or deception check based on what you're trying to do. And if a player rolls a 20 in here, they already know what's going to happen because the book says it. As opposed to I get to kind of interpret what happens. Similarly, they could, based on this, pull literally anybody off the street, off of a random town, and convince them to do whatever they wanted, basically. Any minor thing without a risk. A random person on the street. And here's the thing. I'm a pretty friendly person, nice person in general. If a stranger pulled me off the street and asked me to do something, I don't care how nice they are, how charismatic they are. I got my own shit to do. I got my own agenda for stuff I'm doing that day. I'm not taking my time out to help a random stranger with a kind of risky task, right? I would be considered indifferent. I'm not hostile towards total strangers. It's just I got my own things I'm trying to do here, So I don't like this table and how gamified this stuff is. And in a bigger picture, I really dislike that they're naming these things that we do anyways as specific actions. We saw some things in classes that allowed you to take the search action or the study action as a bonus action. And these, to me, we don't need to call these full actions. They're just things that you do as role playing, right? They're not things you do in combat. When I see the word action, I'm thinking combat, right? I'm not taking the study action in combat. I'm asking the Dungeon Master, hey, what do I know about that sigil that I saw? Do I know anything about what the carvers are? And they'll have me make a check. I'm not telling the Dungeon Master, can I take the study action on the carvers? So putting it in that language is really weird to me. I suppose if I was going to hand a brand new player instructions on how to play D&D and they've never seen D&D, never heard D&D, they don't know anybody that plays the game, sure, I might give them these things as stuff that is allowed and expected in the game. But for literally everybody else, we don't need this stuff. New players don't need it because they're likely going to sit with a table of experienced players. They've probably seen D&D played. They'll probably have a talk with a Dungeon Master who's going to explain to them what they can do, some things that they could do on their turn. We don't need to gamify all this stuff. It's really weird. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, the light weapon property is a new thing here, which says it basically allows you to take an extra attack if with a light weapon. As I think is the way that this works, and I think this is potentially, but not definitely broken. It's potentially broken. I have a visitor coming to sit on my lap right now, a feline visitor. It's potentially really strong, potentially broken, which, getting getting to have multiple attacks at first level is potentially very strong. So not sure how I feel about this thing, the light weapon property. Lastly, I guess the last thing to mention here that it is worth talking about is the Unarmed Strike. Still, Unarmed Strikes allowing you to shove. No contested checks. All you have to do is land an Unarmed Strike. And you can knock literally anything prone as long as they're no more than one size bigger than you. It's like, come on, Wizards. Like, this is kind of broken. Uncontested shove somebody to the ground just because you punch them. Any size, right? I could be like, you know, a 5 foot tall half elf, and I can knock something that's 10 feet to the ground with a punch. Even if I have no strength, as long as I hit them, I can knock them to the ground. That doesn't make any sense, and it's kind of broken. I don't think this is the way that shove should be. I think it should just be move them 5 feet away, not knock prone. Knock prone's really strong, unless you're planning on changing how, you know, the benefits to being prone. So, all in all, I guess my big thoughts about this is some big changes here. I don't really like the spell lists, because I guess here's what I'll say. I think they're fine. The spell lists themselves are fine, but we're going to need class spell lists as well. We're still going to need it because we're going to do it anyways. Giving us more work to do in a player document isn't helpful for new players. It's just annoying. And I'm waiting to see how the wizard class works to reserve my judgment for what seems like they're getting rid of known spells. We'll see. I don't know yet, but I'm waiting for that to make my judgment. So my voice is about shot. I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you for watching. This will be up on YouTube very shortly. Thank you for watching if you're watching on there. And we'll be back, as always, Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central for Sunday D&D prep. Rime of the Frost Maiden, Chapter 7, endgame stuff. It's going to be exciting. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching. See you next time.